Matthew Dickerson, very good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thanks, Chris. How are you going this morning?
Good, thank you. Now, this poor chap who has swallowed earbuds while he was trying to get to sleep. Terrible.
It is, and it's quite interesting. You'd think you'd notice the idea of an earbud going down your throat in the middle of the night, but obviously when we're sound asleep, we're sound asleep. And this particular gentleman got up in the morning, didn't really notice anything was wrong, went out and shoveled some snow. Obviously he's over in America at this time of year, so he shoveled some snow and came inside a bit thirsty after doing a bit of work and tried to have a drink, and he couldn't swallow. In fact, the water almost came back out of his mouth almost as quick as it had gone down, and he couldn't work out what was wrong, couldn't get anything down. And his son actually said to him, "Dad, didn't you lose your earbud this morning?" And he said, "Oh, look, that wouldn't be it." And sure enough, went off to the hospital, had an x-ray. Next thing you know, emergency surgery, they cut out an earbud which was stuck at the bottom of his esophagus. So luckily it didn't go down his air pipe, went down his food tube rather than his air tube. And they took it out. I haven't been able to find out whether it's still operational. I don't know whether he could play music inside him. I don't know. The song that came to mind is that Kiki D song, that I've got the music in me. But I just think it's a bit of a warning, I suppose, to everyone. And that's why he said he's been talking about it, because he said, I know lots of people listen to music when they go to bed, and my kids are no different to that. They do exactly this. And so he said he wanted to put a warning out there for people to be aware that you go and listen to music, it might end up somewhere it shouldn't be.
The brain does all sorts of weird things while you're asleep, and as I said to you off air, I've got sleep apnea, so I definitely wouldn't try it.
No, that sounds very dangerous.
Yeah. Now, could the simple backyard be revolutionised by technology?
The backpack, yeah, certainly the backpack, we think we've got pretty much the backpack solved. It's a pretty simple process. You put a few straps on, you got a few different pockets, and away you go. But what I love about people developing technological solutions is nothing is off limits. So a backpack, this is a new concept with a backpack that's got shock absorbers built in. And the idea is that when you put your shoulder straps on and you put a strap around your waist, that's all locked solidly to your body. But the backpack itself has got little rails that it sits on. So as you move or run or walk around, the actual backpack moves up and down without having to move up and down on your back. So quite a good concept. The shock absorbers are there to make it easier for you to carry a load. But then they got a little bit cleverer about it, and they thought, while we've got this movement, if we've got movement, we've got the possibility of generating electricity. So they basically worked on a concept where you can power, for example, a watch, you could power a small LED light, probably not enough power there to charge up a mobile phone, but enough power to power some of those small things there. So, for example, you might have a little light on the back of your backpack as you're walking around at night time that's showing where people are, or where you are, sorry, but it's being powered by your jiggling of your backpack. So they talk about the shock absorbers reduce the movement and the jiggling by about 21%, and about 14% of the actual mechanical energy that's being used in that backpack is converted to electricity. So I thought the backpacks were nailed, but maybe we've got more to go in backpacks.
All right, well, let's talk billiards. Have you ever thought of playing billiards against someone else in another part of the world?
I've never thought about it. I do like my pool and my billiards and my snooker, but it's one of those things, it's a great social event to stand around the pool table and talk about how good you could be if only the table was flat. And in this scenario, the World Pool Association, or the World Pool and Billiards Association, sorry, it's called officially, have been concerned about the lack of competition because obviously we've got COVID, so people aren't able to travel, international competitions are being curtailed. So they've lined up with an Australian company and an overseas company called Qd, and they're basically working on a solution where you can play remote billiards. Now, the first thing they've done is they basically have what they call a black box, which sounds like a magical box, that you put at each event. So you put one on your pool table and one on my pool table. It doesn't matter where we are in the world. And after you play your shot, it projects onto the table as to where the ball should be. And then a referee or a judge at one end can actually move those balls around, which sounds pretty cumbersome, but that's their starting point. The real point they're trying to get to is they're going to build a robotic machine that, a bit like 10-pin bowling, when the pins are knocked down and then the machine comes along and replaces those pins in the exact location. By having a robotic machine at each end, you play your shot and then it projects over to my end as to where the ball should be, and a robotic arm comes out, or arms, and moves those balls around to the exact location. Probably takes a little bit longer to play a game. They do talk about the information being sent through in real time, but obviously add the robot in and it adds a little bit of time. But it's one of those things, I didn't really know this was a major problem, Chris, and apparently this is a problem that needs to be solved. So pool and billiards and snooker can be played again around the world. Upcoming players who want to be able to play need this sort of competition. Professionals need something to do. And it would be quite strange not being able to watch what the other player was doing, not be able to eyeball the other player. But these are the sort of solutions we need to come up with the situation we've got around the world at the moment.
And talking about the situation around the world at the moment with the pandemic, has it had an impact on teenagers and their online experience?
Yeah, logic says that is going to have an impact, but I like to rely on data rather than just my gut feel. And when you look at things like sexting and cyberbullying, people in that 13 to 18 age category, the number of online searches for those has increased by 55% for sexting and 39% for cyberbullying. So there's certainly some issues there. Then when you look at data out of Kids Helpline, which is a national counselling service here in Australia, you see that the number of online inquiries has gone up quite dramatically if you compare 2020 period to 2019 period. Even in the 5 to 12 age bracket, people searching for being safe on the internet has risen by 21%. And I suppose the really scary one for me is when you look at not kids now, but things that involve kids. So just when you look for illegal and harmful content, child sexual abuse material, for example, that's adults searching for this sort of information. That's increased by 123%, and image-based abuse has leapt by more than 172%. So that's pretty scary from what I see, and obviously I've got kids, so you're always worried about how safe they are. One of the things that I'd say for people is that there is an Office of e-Safety in Australia, and they've got some pretty good guidelines. If you go to esafety.gov.au, maybe parents have a read of that and then get their kids in and have a look at that, because the people that are out there trying to lure kids or groom kids, kids are pretty innocent and they think people are honest and they're a bit more open and sharing with them than they should be. So maybe having that discussion, parents and kids together, would be a good idea.
We are talking technology with Matthew Dickerson, and this topic is quite crucial and also very relevant. Bushfire in Australia. Can improved technology help predict the path of a bushfire?
Yeah, I think so. And there's been some work done in the past where they do have some bushfire modelling. Probably the biggest issue with that has been that different states have different models that they use. And so if you've got a bushfire, for example, on the New South Wales-Queensland border, the New South Wales fireys might be saying, we think it's going to go in this direction and in this many hours it'll be over here. And the Queensland fireys are saying something a little bit different. So there's now a national approach. They've taken all the information from all the different bushfire models that they've had with all the states. They've wrapped that into one complete system. They look at the wind, the topography, the vegetation, as much information is fed into the model as possible. And then out of that, they believe they can predict where the bushfire will go over about the next 10 hours. It doesn't sound like a huge amount of time, but if you think about fireys, if they knew where it was going to be in 10 hours and they could go and start actually be ready to attack the fire where it moved over those next 10 hours, I think that would give them an absolutely huge advantage. It's built basically on the back of a bushfire simulator called Phoenix Rapid Fire. That was developed by the University of Melbourne. But again, as I said, they fed in lots of information from all the states to get the best of all those models and then deliver that. So, look, we haven't had terrible bushfires this summer like we've had last summer, but of course the summer's not over yet, so there's always possibility. But this won't be ready to go immediately. There's still some work being done on it, but should be ready to go by next bushfire season.
Right, and Matthew, I understand the federal government has finally released its plans for supporting electric vehicles.
Yeah, I think the entire EV industry and people that think that this is the future have been completely underwhelmed by the plan. They've been working on this plan for 2 years. In fact, it's been more than 2 years they've been working on it. It's 2 years overdue. And they brought out their future fuel strategy. So it sounds interesting, what's going to happen with that. But the ideas they came up with are probably ones that they could have come up with in a week or two. The first thing they said is they're going to do some co-investment with the private sector in charging infrastructure. And we've got some pretty good charging infrastructure already being built. NRMA, Tesla, ChargeFox, they're all building their own infrastructure without government help. They're going to trial some electric cars in the Comcar fleet. So that's the fleet that takes pollies around, mainly in Canberra. So that's good. Joe Biden has said they're going to convert 635,000 government vehicles to EVs in America, but obviously we've done a little bit less here. This is the one that gets me, Chris. Point 3 in the plan is they're going to update the Green Vehicle Guide website. So they've been planning this for 2 years, Chris, and one of the points they're going to do is they're going to update the website. So I'm just not convinced that's really the sort of planning we need, maybe a little bit more. And they're going to ask energy agencies to consider options for managing potential congestion on the electricity grid. Well, given the fact that only 0.6% of our sales last year were EVs, then there's probably not too much congestion there. Part of the issue, the commentators have been saying, is that the coalition government made a lot of fun of the Labor Party during the 2019 election campaign. Electric cars were going to be a war on your weekend, going to destroy your weekend, you're not going to be able to enjoy yourself. So it probably seems a little bit rich for the coalition now to come out in a plan that really is positive about EVs. But I think we need a bit more than what we've got there at the moment. We are falling a long way behind from other countries. And car manufacturers have been quite open in saying that when they release a new car, they're taking it to countries where there is open support for EVs, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be handing money over, like some countries do that, they give you subsidies. But, for example, in Australia, you could buy a $200,000 6.2 litre gas-guzzling ute and you pay no luxury car tax. You buy a $70,000 EV, you pay luxury car tax. So I think they've probably got it a little bit skewed the wrong way. I think there's some simple things they could do. Some of the states are trying to do a little bit. The ACT government gives interest-free loans if you buy an EV. Victoria, they've got discounts on registration and stamp duty. So I think there's some little simple things they could do. But updating a website, I think we can do better than that, Chris.
Yeah, pretty slack.
Yeah.
All right, Matthew, we'll leave it there. We will look out for Matthew Dickerson on YouTube, and we'll talk again next Wednesday, mate. Have a good week.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Chris.